So, hi everyone, I'm Jerry Lewis. So, I'm the Deputy Course Leader for the Masters in Learning and Teaching in the Creative Industries at BIMM Brighton. I also co-authored the course with the course leader last year, and I also lead BIMM Institute's internal staff development programme. So one of the really interesting things that I think is useful to note about BIMM now doing master's courses is that actually we've been running postgraduate education for a number of years now. So we originally had a PG Cert, a postgraduate certificate in learning and teaching that was running since 2006. That's now the course that I lead, and that had been offered externally for people becoming teachers, and that's what is now transitioned into this master's. So I'm going to give you an overview of this course. Unfortunately, for me at least, I'm not leading this in BIMM Berlin. I'm sure you're going to have an absolutely fantastic course leader and team delivering it there. I would try and convince you to come over to the UK and study here, but if we're honest, I think Berlin is much cooler than Brighton. We also have our fantastic student, Jess Balsam. Do you want to quickly introduce yourself, Jess, what you're doing on the course currently?
Hi everyone. So I'm currently studying on Moutsea in Brighton. I did a songwriting degree with BIMM Bristol, and I also did a songwriting diploma at BIMM Brighton. So I'm a piano teacher mainly.
Great, thanks very much, Jess. So as with the last course presentation, I'll ask you a couple of questions as we go through, and then we can see if there are any further questions at the end. So all the way through this, please do drop any questions you have into the Q&A box. I know that at least some of you are interested in this MA. I think probably more so popular music practice, but we'll see if we can convince you. So a bit about the course. Well, the full title is a Master of Arts in Learning and Teaching in the Creative Industries. Yes, we do think that teaching is an art as well as a science. The technical jargon for that is that it is 180 credits. A credit is just an amount of work in UK curriculum jargon at level 7, which is postgraduate level. So all that tells you is that this is a full master's course. That's actually quite interesting because most programs that develop you into being a teacher aren't actually full masters. So this gives you a kind of interesting combination of a practical skill set into becoming a teacher, potentially for the first time, with that academic angle, that kind of full postgraduate master's study, as Cindy mentioned in terms of the research. Now, it's good to note that our focus here on this master's is on two things. Firstly, it's on adult education. So that's teaching people that have gone beyond compulsory schooling. This could be further education, colleges, higher education, university level teaching. If you want to become a school teacher, at least in the UK, there are routes available to you. I think they're more restricted in Germany, honestly, and most other European countries. So if you want to be a school teacher, you're probably better off going and doing a PGCE, as Nathan mentioned. Our course is much more about teaching adults and teaching in the kind of private, creative subjects. So the other thing is that while BIMM started as a music-focused institution, we have kind of broadened out now. In the UK, we have a screen and film school, we have drama, theatre, all of those things going on as well. And for a number of years, our PG Cert has taken quite an interdisciplinary group of students. So we've had improv comedians, we've had visual artists, all of these kinds of things. So we're really looking at how the creative subjects, in quite a broad sense, get taught and how people learn creative skills and knowledge. The course itself is very practical. Fundamentally, this is here to help you develop into an effective and a reflective teacher. So it's about having that skill set to support other people's learning, but also that key concept of reflective practice that Anna mentioned at the beginning, which is all just about how we continue learning throughout our professional lives. Actually, we find that one of the best tools for reflective development, ongoing development, is actually the skill set of being a researcher. So the benefit of running a full master's is that you get a really great opportunity to learn how to research, how to engage with the academic disciplines, not just for their own sake and kind of talking about theory because it's interesting, but using theory as a vehicle, as a lens to improve what you do and help your students learn in more effective ways. Just quickly, I want to share with you our ethos, our approach on the course. Really, we think that learning how to teach well is kind of just learning how to think and problem solve as an expert teacher does. We don't think there is a one-size-fits-all approach to good teaching, although we can all spot bad teaching when we see it. It's about helping you really make decisions in an informed way about who your students are, what your subject is, and kind of navigating all of that complexity of human work. So this combines a few different things. So for us, developing teaching takes a lot of creativity, actually. It takes us being curious to what is, who our students are, what we do, our personalities, and to experiment, and to try things out and to learn from doing things differently in our teaching. But alongside that, we do need a reliable knowledge base. We need evidence to inform our actions and decisions. We can't just kind of go off-piste and only take our intuitions. There's a whole load of issues with that. So we need evidence, we need knowledge, and crucially, we also need to work with other people who see what we do and get their feedback and get their perspectives. So you can see this course as kind of sitting at the intersection between three things. That's taking a creative approach to your development, to other people's development, but also thinking about that critically, taking multiple perspectives and thinking about what we do and what we think about what we do, and collaborating with other people as we do so. Great. So Jess, I'm kind of interested, now that I've got you all the way through the presentation. This is kind of what it looks like on paper. What's been your experience of this so far, this process?
This process or the course?
Yeah, so the course, hopefully living this process. So what's kind of struck you so far in your learning about the course?
I think the course is really, what struck me is how unique the course was. I hoped that it would be unique as it looks on paper. And I think genuinely my experience so far has been is that it's a really unique kind of blend of really quite deep exploratory kind of creative practice. And not just creative practice in terms of your teaching as well, as you might just get on a kind of PGCE. It is very much, we are musicians or artists, and we're kind of, and that our creative practice kind of embodies all of what we do, and all of what we do plays into our kind of identities and what we do as a teacher and as learners. So I think my experience has been very much one of kind of exploratory creative practice, really kind of deep individual self-learning, and alongside the kind of nitty-gritty, more theory, teaching and learning kind of stuff, really.
Great, that's really helpful, thank you. So in terms of thinking about what this course is for, we really intend this to help people develop in a few different ways. So there's the career route, obviously, of becoming a teacher and entering education as a route. But we also accept that the course could be for people that teach already and have a particular background in education. Jess, you mentioned that you'd been doing piano teaching and other things like this. So it's also for people that want to kind of upskill in a certain way. Or progress into educational research as a route, as Sini mentioned, using the MA as a stepping stone for further research through an educational doctorate or a PhD. Since we've had a previous PG Cert course that's very similar to this, I think it's kind of interesting to note where some of our alumni have gone. It's actually been surprisingly international, even though we've been a Brighton-based course pretty much since 2006. And we've had students go on to teach and do educational consultancy, educational leadership and management throughout the United States, India, private music schools in Dubai and Thailand. So there's an element that I think this course has a degree of international, I'd probably say clout rather than reputation, but these kinds of teacher education courses from the UK kind of do get looked on well, and they do allow people to go do some interesting things. Again, Jess, like what are your thoughts for your development and your career post course?
I think I think as a degree student, I really wanted to do a kind of straight PG cert. And now that I'm on this kind of much more explorative masters, I think actually at this point, I'm not really looking ahead, as bizarre as that sounds. I'm just trying to kind of be present to all these kind of really different and uncomfortable and new and challenging and enjoyable kind of situations that the MA does kind of put you in if you're willing to kind of go to those kind of places. So I think the short answer is I'd love a role kind of in HE music, perhaps obviously, doing one-to-one stuff, but beyond that I'm not sure really. I'm having lots of new experiences and happy to see where that goes really.
Great, thank you. I should note, not to give too much gushing praise, but I mean Jess is one of the students that we have that quite easily could go down any of these routes, whether that be education, classroom practice, whether that be some form of leadership down the line or educational research. And I think often the benefit of this course, and in a way I'm very happy that Jess kind of mentioned that thing of noticing, staying present to the interesting things that arise. Actually, a lot of people don't decide where they want to go until after the course, and you can kind of let the experience, let the learning wash over you and find the interesting things through approaching the course in that way. We've certainly tried to set up the masters so that it allows people to do that. Great. So because there are kind of multiple places people could come through on the course, multiple destinations after the course, we've established two kind of approximate pathways for how you could go through the MA. First one is focused on people that are quite early on in their career as teachers. So this route is for people who are either new to teaching or they feel relatively inexperienced at it. And if that's the case for you, then you can get a more practical experience. You get more time spent on teaching placements. So we will actually assign you a particular module within BIMM, and you will be mentored by that module leader, and they will support you, they will help your development to link in ideas from your taught modules and to try and put them to practice in a real environment. If you are slightly more experienced, so say you're already qualified as a teacher, or you have, we'd say, over 3 years of teaching experience already, you can actually do a slightly different route that's more focused on educational leadership and research. It's kind of interesting, Jess, you sort of sat at the middle point between these two, and I remember at interview we had quite a long conversation about which you'd prefer. Do you mind telling us a bit about what your experience has been on placement, because you've had quite an interesting placement experience yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I think the placement was a really important kind of thing for me to get out of the masters, and I'm very, very grateful that we were able to make it work with me being based in Bristol and studying in Brighton. So my placement started out as kind of being one-to-one academic support tutor essentially, which was the main thing that I was interested upon kind of starting the masters. And since then I've been working on different modules and actually building up my professional practice at BIMM Bristol, which has been really, really amazing, and something that certainly wouldn't have happened had I not have been on that placement there. And in terms of the support on the placement, it's a super supportive environment, because you do get that real kind of day-to-day experience and knowledge share, and you do get one-to-one time with a mentor, which is really, really invaluable.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. We might come back to some of this when we talk about the kind of study hours on the course, what a week looks like, because I think often the placements are the thing that are most indeterminate or the most flexible in terms of how you work together. The thing I would say is that we don't put people on placements that they're not ready for. There's a negotiation when you begin the course about what your interests are, what your skills are, and then we will help you find a placement that is beneficial for your learning. Certainly the last thing we would want to do is throw someone into a music theory class, for example, who doesn't know any music theory. That would be dreadful. How the course is structured. So this is very similar to Cine's Masters, the Masters in Popular Music Practice, in that there are 4 taught modules that are 30 credits. On our course, you will get 3 core modules and then a choice 1 optional module that you can pick. And there's a selection of 3 that I'll go into. Alongside that, there is the research as well, and depending on your pathway, this will be a bit different. So if you're doing the experienced pathway, you will do a kind of big 60 credit final dissertation. And if you're doing the early career pathway, then we give you a slightly smaller research report. The project itself might, funnily enough, be relatively big, but the report itself, the write-up, is slightly smaller, and we actually award you credits for your teaching placement. So that allows you to balance some of the difficulties of both academic study, professional practice in your teaching, and obviously living and having a life and all those things that we want to do. So I kind of want to just share with you what this looks like in practice. BIMM now is using a semester model. Or with these MAs there are 3, so it should really be a trimester model, but sure, I will be a pedant later. If you're doing the full-time early career version of the course, then you will take your studies just across a 12-month period, so it's 1 calendar year. Semester 1 runs from late September through to February, semester 2 is from February through to June, and then semester 3 runs throughout the summer, June until September. So on this version of the course, in semester 1 you will do 2 30 credit taught modules alongside beginning your teaching placement. So teaching, learning and assessment is really an introductory module to what teaching and learning at high level looks like. So this is a kind of nuts and bolts toolkit of how to plan lessons, how to get students active in their learning, how to assess whether they have learnt, and how to give them really useful developmental feedback. Really goes through all the different kind of key practices that we do as teachers. Investigating learning and teaching is a similar module, but focused on educational research. So this is an introduction to how we investigate and learn about education, and we take various different educational topics and research questions, and we get you to practice research methods such as interview, observation, and really try and find interesting stuff out, work out why we do what we do. In semester 2 you will take another core taught module, creative educational practice. You'll continue your teaching placement, but you'll also start your research project. So back in semester 1, when you're doing your research module, the output for that assessment is actually a proposal for your research, and that could well be the research that you do later on in the year. So there's kind of a nice through line there. Creative educational practice is the module that Jess is just finishing. Hopefully he's having a lot of fun with. The whole focus here is about what creativity is, how we teach it, and how we assess creativity. I'm interested, Jess, is there anything you'd throw in about that module since you're just finishing it up?
I think this is the module that, if I can say it, I think I've enjoyed the most. It's super hands-on. It's really challenging. I think it gives you kind of, you know, it puts you in an environment where you're constantly kind of thinking about the various multiple and diverse kind of perspectives on creativity and how we all think about creativity. So I'm just loving that it's been so hands-on, and it's been a great opportunity to collaborate with other teachers, which is something that I hadn't done before. So team teaching, which is what we've just done, it's been really, really interesting. I've learned a lot from it.
Great, thanks, Jess. That touches on a really good point. I've got a slide about assessment later, but it is worth pointing out that there is a mix of academic and practical assessments throughout the course. So, for example, investigating learning and teaching is assessed by a written proposal, but both teaching, learning and assessment and creative educational practice both have assessments where you have to teach. We don't grade you on your teaching here, it's developmental, but you have to plan, deliver a lesson, and that becomes part of your assessment. You reflect on it. Semester 3 then, this is where you get a choice of your optional module. You get to specialise in one of 3 directions, and then you continue, you finish your research report. So the specialisms you can pick are curriculum and instructional design, so that's how to design a course for a particular educational environment. It could be academic, it could be a certain professional course, it could be training, it could be part of your own portfolio music career, it could be that you want to run music workshops in a specific kind of fashion. Education, ideology and society allows you to specialise down the route of educational theory. Really, this is much more focused on ideas, big ideas about education, about what we teach, why we teach it, the position of students and teachers within education and society. And we look at how those big ideas come to inform and define what we do almost unconsciously. So looking at the power of ideology to define what we do without even realising it. So this is where you can get woke, if you like that stuff. Coaching and mentoring is the 3rd specialism. So this is about the professional role of a developmental coach and or mentor. They're both very similar roles in that they work one-to-one with students in a very creative fashion. Rather than projecting onto your students what they should learn and how they should learn it, really helping them find their own answers and being open, investigative, curious and creative and helping them do that. You'll also notice that there isn't any placement in semester 3 because BIMM's undergraduate calendar finishes at the end of semester 2. So you can see that you kind of get a bit of a break in semester 3 to do your write-ups and finish your research. So having had a look at a few of the people that are turning up to tonight's Q&A, I think this is the route that people are most interested in. There is a part-time version of this course as well, which looks pretty much the same. The only thing to note is that this is actually really nice as a developmental model, because year 1 you can completely focus in on your teaching practice. It's all about teaching, creative educational practice and then your specialism. And then in year 2 you get to deep dive into research and spend some really good time working out what you want to investigate and doing that in a very kind of rigorous way. The experienced educator pathway is currently just offered part-time, actually. From our experience and from applicants, people that want to take this pathway are generally working at the same time. But you can see it's actually quite a similar course. The only difference really is a different core module called Leading Educational Change, and that's really a step up into leadership, which is different from management. It's about how we mobilise, how we inspire people to make positive changes. So it's about working as a leader at many different levels of hierarchy to try and get interesting things done and to try and make the world a bit of a better place. So the big question that people often ask is, what does the course actually look like? How many hours am I going to spend studying on it? And this is always the most awkward question to answer, because it usually depends a great deal on how much you put in. Before the big reveal, I mean, Jess, do you want to tell us a bit about what a kind of typical week might look like on the course for you?
Sure. So at this point in semester 2, we've got a evening seminar, which is about 3 hours. We usually have, or we have had, well, we've still had actually, 2-day workshops. So over a Saturday and a Sunday. For me personally, I try and match the kind of study time that I'm in lesson or in our virtual lessons with my kind of home study, if you like. And I've also got my own teaching practice, which a couple of afternoons a week, and I've got some other teaching that I do in Bristol as well. So for me, I think the part-time is very much the best option. Does that answer it in a kind of succinct enough way, I hope?
Yeah, I mean, it basically mirrors exactly what I have on the slides. Um, Collusion, obviously collusion. Um, so one useful way of breaking it down is kind of as Jess has done so, looking at a typical module on the programme. So each semester is 12 weeks of teaching and then some assessment. So for example, you might have one 3-hour evening session per week. There would be 12 of those because there's 12 weeks in the semester. Alongside the actual session itself, we'd recommend that you spend about 3 hours, maybe more, preparing for that in a particular way. So in certain modules, there will be set reading that you'll engage with, or perhaps follow-on application tasks where we ask you to use what you've learned in the seminar and then put it to practice in your teaching in some way. At master's level, this stuff is really essential because the thing that you can't do, and you wouldn't want to do, is leave this stuff as just theory in your head and you read it and it kind of makes sense and then you don't use it. So this is all modelling and scaffolding how you can actually change your teaching in a positive way using what we talk about. Some modules will involve these 2-day workshops, as Jess mentioned. There could be more or less of these depending on how the module is designed, but let's say there'll be one of these weekend workshops per semester if you're having those regular weekly sessions. We kind of balance the slides so they make sense. Alongside that, you also get 2 really rich in-depth developmental tutorials per module. So we've been doing these on Zoom for since the start of the course, but obviously now everything's online. We can offer this distance as well. These are a really rich way to get support with what you're working on. Could be your assessments, could be a particular puzzle that you've got coming up in your learning anyway. So just some really good one-to-one support there. In terms of placement hours, what we would recommend is that it's kind of half a day or one full day a week, depending on your study mode, full or part-time, to be on placement every week. So this would be at BIMM, on your particular module with your mentor, really getting in there and doing stuff in those classes. As I said, these occur across semesters 1 and 2, and the whole point of this is that you need to have accumulated at least 100 hours of teaching practice in some way by the end of the course. That looks like an intimidating number. It's actually really small when you start to work out week-to-week numbers. The other thing that we ask you to do as part of that placement is to get observed in your teaching, get support to improve, have someone else that's really experienced to guide you through it. So we put on what we call micro-teaching workshops, which is where you will plan a lesson, you'll deliver a lesson to everyone else on the MA, and you will get some really rich support, developmental feedback, looking at your lesson and how to improve it. That's one of the things that Jess has just done for her assessment, where she was mentioning. So I actually did it this weekend, so it's very current stuff. Alongside that, if you're doing the placement, we would get you to do 3 teaching observations on placement. So again, you get some support in a kind of safe environment in the micro-teaching, and then some observations of your teaching practice with actual students, and we'll balance that out so it works with where you're at in your learning. And of course, alongside that is the kind of the big bag of indeterminate time for you to independently study, to write your assessments, to carry out your research. And I really hate to say it because it sounds cheesy, but it's the case that the more you put into this course, really the more you get out of it in terms of your learning, but also in terms of the professional opportunities that you get as a result of working with professional teachers at BIMM. We've spoken a bit about assessment. As I said, each module kind of mixes both academic and practical ways of assessing. We quite like the reflective case study or reflective essay. You'll often be writing in the first person rather than the third person because this is about you, it's about your teaching and how you improve it. One of the cool things that we've done, which is quite innovative at this point in at least UK higher education, is that you don't actually get a grade at all on the course until the very end. So each module on the course is pass or fail. So there will be an assessment, you will be assessed in some way, but it's at threshold level. We want to see whether you're meeting the kind of minimum requirements of master's level study and teaching practice. And then you get shed loads of really useful feedback and support to improve your work and to improve your teaching. There's a lot of research out there on the negative impact of grades and looking at grades on how people can be motivated and creative in their learning. So we take all of that away and we put the grading only at the very end of the course. So right at the end of your master's study, you get to curate rather, a final portfolio. And that portfolio gets drawn from your best module assessments, so the ones that you feel best represent the standard of your thinking, the standard of your teaching. You can change those depending on your developmental feedback, put them all into one portfolio, and then that gets graded and that becomes the mark of your final MA. So it hopefully represents the standard of work at the end of a really long and creative developmental journey.